Today is September 20th, 2023. I do not normally do top 5 or top 10 lists, but I will make an exception this time. Occasionally, I have media platforms ask my opinion on certain topics. One media platform, Sputnik International, asked me to talk about the 5 weapon systems I think are most important for Russia and why, and this coincides with Russian Gunsmith Day. That was September 19th, yesterday, honoring workers of the nation's defense industry. So they asked me to talk about products of the Russian defense industry: helicopters, tanks, artillery, missiles, drones, whatever I thought was most important. I tried to pick 5. They're in no particular order, and to be fair, I will talk about corresponding Ukrainian/NATO capabilities just to keep this discussion balanced. So number 1, and these are not in any particular order, I talked about the Pantsir S1, but really what I wanted to say was Russian air defense altogether, because there is no one single air defense system that makes up Russian air defense capabilities. The Pantsir S1 is just one of many systems that work together to create what is called an integrated air defense system. The Pantsir is a point defense system. It's used to protect other air defense assets. It's also used to protect very specific potential targets. Pantsir has a gun. It also has missiles. It uses both of these to destroy incoming airborne threats. I picked Pantsir S1 because we've seen it destroy a little bit of everything, from enemy drones to HIMARS guided rockets to these air-launched Storm Shadow cruise missiles. They've been successful against a very wide variety of targets. Of course, they're not perfect. We have articles like this, for example, from The Drive, the Warzone, Ukraine situation report. Russian SAMs can't stop this Storm Shadow. Russian air defenses are having a tough time dealing with the Storm Shadow cruise missile, even at close range. That is a picture, a still image from a video of a Storm Shadow missile hitting a target. I believe that was when it hit a bridge. And they show a couple of videos, well, at least one video of the Pantsir specifically attempting and failing to lock on and destroy Storm Shadow missile. Here's the problem with articles like this. They ignore all of the other documented cases of even the Pantsir itself successfully locking on and destroying Storm Shadow missiles. So that is a problem, and that is something we've seen consistently across the Western media. No air defense system is perfect, and we have to take into consideration that when you design a missile, you are designing it specifically to also evade potential air defenses. And so the Storm Shadow has design specifications specifically to help it evade potential air defense systems like the Pantsir S1. The thing is, you design a missile to penetrate Russian air defenses. Russians will see what this characteristic is that gives it that advantage, and they will modify their air defense systems to counter it. It is a constant arms race, and one side definitely has an advantage over the other, and in this case it is Russian. I will tell you why they have a very definite advantage. It's because they have the largest and most capable air defense industry and ecosystem of systems. And this comes to us from US government and arms industry funded CSIS. This is their missile defense project. This is called Russian Air and Missile Defense, last updated August 2021. And I'll just read through some of it for you. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union invested heavily in its air defense systems. As a result, Russia now possesses some of the most advanced air and missile defense systems in the world. Russian air defense systems are also highly proliferated and currently in use by dozens of nations around the world. Furthermore, many countries have developed variants and begun indigenous production of these weapon systems, and that includes nations like China, who have outright bought Russian air defense systems like the S-400. They've also taken older Soviet era and Russian air defense systems, built their own versions, and then they modify it to suit their needs. The article continues, current Russian air defense doctrine follows a three-tier approach. This layered system allows Russian air defense forces to create an anti-access area denial A2AD zones that can be difficult to penetrate. The highest tier of these defensive networks uses long-range systems such as the S-200, S-300, and S-400, providing air defense bubbles potentially up to 800 kilometers in diameter. These zones are typically augmented by the second tier, which includes medium-range systems like the Buk and its variants. This medium-range layer is intended to increase radar coverage within the air defense zone and augment the more limited inventories of longer-range interceptor missiles. The third tier uses mobile short-range systems like the ASA or NEVA to provide extra protection for key areas such as military bases. These systems, along with highly mobile systems like the Buk, are often also attached to formations of ground forces in the field. Due to their vulnerability to low-flying threats such as cruise missiles, the first and second layer defenses are often guarded by point defense systems like the Tor or Pantsir S1. So the Pantsir S1 is the wheeled truck-based version, and the Tor missile system is a tracked weapon platform, and they're both used to, among other things, defend longer range air defense systems. And you hope that by having this wide variety, one of these systems will be best suited for any particular threat. And even if none of them are effective at taking down a particular missile, say the Storm Shadow, one of them will be the closest to being capable of doing it, and that is the system that Russia can focus on modifying to ensure that it can eventually take down these missiles. So there's some video floating around of the Pantsir S1 missing a Storm Shadow missile, and there's several other videos of the Pantsir S1 actually intercepting Storm Shadow cruise missiles successfully. And so that is a problem that Russia is in the process of fixing. We've seen the Pantsir S1 in particular intercepting HIMARS rockets. We also have articles like this from CNN that point out, again, this point I'm trying to make about Russia's ability to adapt because they have such extensive resources invested in air defense and also electronic warfare, which is adjacent to air defense. And this is Russia's jamming of US-provided rocket systems complicates Ukraine's war effort. So the Pantsir S1 may be able to intercept HIMARS guided rockets if it's in the area and available to do that. But Russia has also developed a means of jamming and confusing these guided rockets on their way to their target, causing them to miss. And that is what the article is about. It is about how Russia is jamming these rockets, these guided rockets, and the US has to try to come up with a way to help Ukrainians circumvent this jamming. We haven't heard much about the HIMARS lately. We do see it with the occasional tactical success, but it is not having any sort of impact strategically. None of the weapon systems the West has given Ukraine are having a strategic impact on the fighting. And it's important to point out that while we're talking about Russian air defenses, Ukraine inherited a large number of Soviet-era air defense systems, and this is what has denied Russia, even up to this day, inability to use its military aviation across the entirety of Ukrainian airspace. They are unable to do that because Ukraine also possesses very effective air defense systems. The Soviet era air defense systems they inherited from the Soviet Union. So that was number one. Number two, Lancet kamikaze drones. The Lancet is one of the first large-scale uses of these kamikaze or loitering drones that we have seen anywhere on any battlefield used very successfully. The Lancet can be seen taking out almost any type of imaginable target in terms of Ukrainian equipment, everything from radar sets to counter battery radar systems. They're taking out air defense systems, tanks, artillery, both towed and self-propelled. The Lancet allows Russian forces to find and destroy long-range weapon systems without they themselves having to come within range of them. So in stark contrast to Ukrainian forces amid their current offensive, especially in the Zaporozhye area, where Ukraine has to rush toward Russian positions and try to weather the incoming fire, close in and attack Russian positions to try to compel them to withdraw. Russia is able to send these Lancet drones far behind enemy lines to strike at, say, an artillery piece before Russian forces even come within range of it. They're also able to clear an area out of, say, air defense systems. This is part of why Ukraine has very limited air defense systems now compared to when this conflict began in February of last year. Now, you may see some articles out there about how Ukraine is constructing all of these wooden mock-ups of weapon systems to draw in, say, Lancet loitering munitions, so they hit these wooden mock-ups instead of the actual weapon system. The problem with this is, while it does occasionally cause Russia to send a Lancet to destroy one of these wooden mock-ups, the Lancet is often working with another drone circling up above, a spotter drone that is observing the target for a while to collect as much information as possible, not just on it itself, but on other potential targets in the area. Often in the videos that you see on, say, Telegram, you will see the spotter drone detecting the potential target actually firing. If it's an artillery piece, firing artillery shells. If it's an air defense system, they may even catch it launching a missile. And then at that point, they're certain that it is a real weapon system. The Lancet comes in and destroys it. If they're unable to determine whether it is a real weapon system or a decoy, this is one of the benefits that Russia's very massive military industrial output has. They can just send a Lancet to destroy it anyway. They have enough Lancets to destroy all of Ukraine's actual equipment and all of their decoys. So that's very important to keep in mind. Conversely, Ukraine has their own number of drones, first-person view drones in particular. You see many of Ukraine's tactical successes on the battlefield owed to these first-person view drones, hitting Russian tanks, artillery pieces, other types of equipment. It's important to keep in mind that Russia also has first-person view drones in addition to the Lancet. And so again, even though Ukraine has many of the same or similar capabilities as Russia, they just don't have them on the scale Russia has them. So that is number 2, Lancet kamikaze drone. Number 3, Russian T-90M main battle tank. And really, it's not fair to just say T-90M main battle tank, because modernized tanks have the same capabilities as the T-90M. The T-90M is the most modern, mass-produced Russian main battle tank you will find on the battlefield. Yes, the T-14 Armata was on the battlefield. That was more for testing. That was not meant to impact the fighting in any shape, form, or way. It has since been withdrawn, and they will continue working on it and perfecting it. And this is something that I talk about all the time, the realities of modern warfare. A weapon system cannot just be created and used, especially something complicated like a main battle tank. You cannot just put it on the battlefield in just a couple of months and expect it to work, or even a couple of years. Sometimes it takes years and years to perfect a weapon system for it to operate effectively on the battlefield. And in the meantime, Russia has large numbers of T-90Ms and modernized T-72B3Ms, which have the same guns, fire control, optics, including thermal imagery. They also have the same engine as the T-90M, so it's basically a T-90M. It's just using an older T-72 as the base, which makes it cheaper. Even though you will see a lot of Russian tanks being destroyed, it's important to remember a lot of Ukrainian tanks have been destroyed, including more modern NATO tanks transferred over to Ukraine, including the Leopard 2 and the Challenger 2, which was supposed to be practically invincible. Turns out it is not. Tanks are not invincible. They are vulnerable on the battlefield to many, many things, between mines, drones, rocket-propelled grenades, anti-tank guided missiles. There's a whole variety of weapon systems that can damage or destroy a tank. The importance of the main battle tank is it still has very heavy armor, it can still weather a lot of abuse, and it has a relatively long-range gun to provide fire support for infantry and also for breakthrough maneuvers. The T-90M has a gun with a 4-kilometer range. Oftentimes it's able to see and kill on the first shot Ukrainian forces, even if they have something like an anti-tank guided missile, like the Javelin, for example. If you remember, Wally from Canada, this Canadian sniper who went to Ukraine to join the Foreign Legion, his last mission was actually attempting to hunt Russian main battle tanks with a Javelin anti-tank missile. He was part of a 4-man team. One of these tanks detected them before he was able to get in range. It fired 1 shot and killed 2 of his 4-man team, and that was when he decided he was no longer going to stay in Ukraine. He left and returned to Canada, and that's when he told Canadian media this story. So the main battle tank still has a very important role on the battlefield. Ukrainian tanks, you can see them on Telegram also having success. The problem is Russia has just many more tanks and many more weapon systems designed to defeat tanks, which is what causes Ukraine's tank force to be much less effective. Number 4, the Ka-52 attack helicopter, although I would probably extend this to any Russian attack helicopter. They have made it into Western headlines because this has become such a problem they cannot ignore it. So here is the drive, the Warzone. Ukraine's armor appears to have a Russian attack helicopter problem. Russian Ka-52 attack helicopter's presence at the front highlights the need for highly mobile and survivable short-range air defenses. And I mentioned that Ukraine does have very good air defense capabilities inherited from the Soviet Union. Here is an example, the Strela 10 system. The problem is, at this point in the conflict, Russia has degraded, very deliberately so, Ukrainian air defense capabilities to reduce the presence of these type of systems along the line of contact. Ukraine still has a lot of these man-portable air defense systems, these man-pads, which are dangerous for helicopters and low-flying aircraft. But these helicopters, the Ka-52, have anti-tank guided missiles that have a range long enough to keep it outside the range of these man-portable systems. So that's why they're having so much success against Ukrainian armor. The drive says send them more. Unfortunately, the West does not have the military-industrial output to do so. That is number 4. And then number 5, I said Russian artillery. And I kind of broke the rule about picking a specific weapon system. I said Russian artillery in general, because Russian artillery as a component of Russian modern warfare has been so central to this current conflict in Ukraine. They have a huge number of guns, a huge amount of ammunition, and it is more than just firing huge volumes of shells toward Ukrainian positions that makes it that effective. And I want to show you this from the Royal United Services Institute. This is another Western government and arms industry funded think tank. And this was published August 2023, so just last month. Russia's artillery war in Ukraine, challenges and innovations. And it talks about many aspects. The link to this will be in the video description below. It kind of breaks a lot of the misconceptions you see repeated over and over again in the Western media. And I'll read the summary for you. This brief analysis of Russian artillery practice in Ukraine indicates that while it has demonstrated variable levels of efficacy, on the whole, it is a formidable component of the Russian military, with occasionally best-in-breed targeting cycles and a doctrine that allows for artillery to overcome the deficiencies of Russian combined arms forces. It has built a significant ability to find and strike targets over a wide area, and likely retains the ability to mass fires against targets of opportunity. So they're talking about how Russian artillery has both the ability to hit precise targets with just one or just a few rounds. It also most likely has the ability to saturate an area with huge volumes of artillery shells. It continues. It says, indirect fire support operates on mathematical principles of certainty. Approaches to this differ. Western forces, for instance, seek an economy of effort and resources in the application of fires. They tend to pay close attention to all aspects of the gunnery problem to ensure that their fires achieve effect with optimal ammunition consumption. And that has been a huge problem for Ukrainian artillery, because the US has attempted to train Ukrainian gunners to do this. Whether they can or they cannot, they simply don't have enough resources to work with to make that approach effective to match or exceed Russian artillery capabilities, because Russia is also doing that. Plus, they also have huge amounts of ammunition to just saturate an area with artillery fire. It continues. It says, the evidence from Ukraine suggests that Russian forces have combined both approaches. The use of UAVs, radar, and precision munitions indicates that accuracy is essential for certain tasks, but attaining the weight of fires remains critical. And then something that I said in conclusion at the end of this article is that more important than any one individual weapon system is their use in combined arms warfare. And then beyond that, what's most important of all is a nation's military industrial output. If you're fighting a conflict with superior weapon systems, superior tactics and strategy, but you run out of weapons and ammunition, you are still going to lose. Russia has made sure that it has very good weapon systems, good tactics, good strategy, plus they also have a huge military industrial output, which allows them to continue fighting long after their opponent has exhausted their resources. This is a reality that we see taking shape in Ukraine right now. I would say that a military industrial base and its ability to churn out huge volumes of weapons and ammunition is more important than anything else. Of course, it's important to make sure your weapons are capable, that you train your soldiers properly, which Russia is doing, but this abundance that the Russian military industry produces is what is enabling Russia to prevail over the combined support of NATO in its proxy war against Russia in Ukraine. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share. I promise I will not start doing top 5 or top 10 lists. I just made an exception because of the nature of this article that I contributed some insight for. I will be moving my live streams from Fridays to Wednesdays. Angelo Giuliano, who often co-hosts my live streams, is doing roundtables every Sunday, live roundtables every Sunday on his channel. So I'd like to move my live interviews to Wednesday to kind of space it out a little bit. And on Friday, I will be doing what is more or less a geopolitical roundup, my conversations with Garland Nixon and Dr. Wilmore Leon. We pick a variety of topics and talk about it in a relatively short amount of time, about 15 minutes. I will be posting those every Friday. On Monday will be my big update on the conflict in Ukraine or anything else major that is happening at the time. Please check the video description below for other places you can find and follow my work, especially on Telegram. That is where I post the vast majority of everything. If it's not on Telegram, it's not going to be anywhere else. Please check the video description for all of the links that I referenced in this video, as well as for ways you can help support my work. I do not monetize any of my channels. If you want to support my work, please do so through Buy Me a Coffee and also Patreon. Your support month to month or through one-time donations or even just by sharing my work with others is what makes all of this possible. So thank you. And as always, thank you for watching.